Okay, I get asked a lot about the idea of playing standards, fingerstyle arrangements of standard tunes. And so on Saturday, July 19th, I will be doing a 2-hour workshop on this standard, how to think about playing the tune Indiana, solo fingerstyle guitar. If you'd like to join me for that, check out the link below or the link on screen. And in today's lesson, I just want to give you kind of an overview of how to think about the idea of playing on standards in general. I'm going to use Indiana as an example, but these ideas would apply to any tune that you want to work on. So if you've been sort of trying to figure out, well, you know, I play like these 1-4-5 tunes, I play these blues tunes, but I'd like to play something with a few more chord changes, or, you know, one of those great Tin Pan Alley tunes, that's what today's lesson is all about. Now, I could kind of summarize this entire lesson by saying, you want to learn how to play a standard? Just treat it like any other song. Treat it like you'd learn a blues tune, a folk song, whatever. And that's really the idea. And that sounds like kind of a smart-ass thing to say, but hear me out. Really do the same things you would do. So start with, put it in a nice open key. Yes, I know you're supposed to play standards in the key they were written in. And if you're going to jam with other people, it is kind of rude to go, oh, that song in A flat? I do it in C, sorry. If you're gonna play with other people, great, work that out. But if you're gonna play it for yourself, Chet Atkins would play things in C, you know, it's okay. You can move it to a key where it sits nicely. So, for example, Indiana sits great in the key of C. And so that's the first thing, is just work out a key you can put it in where you're gonna get almost entirely open chords. And the next thing is just to go, well, now that it's in that key, what is the thumb doing? So in Indiana, turns out the first few chords are C, A7, D7, G7, and C. Doesn't look too hard. That's no worse than playing like a guitar rag, like Blind Boy Fuller or something. So if you're on a C chord, thumb's gonna be going 5th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string. Same thing on an A chord, 5th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string. And then on the D, 5th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string, or maybe 6th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string. And then on the G, 6th string, 4th string, maybe 5th string, 3rd in the bass, and 4th string, and then back to C, right? So you're just setting out a roadmap so that the thumb is not something you have to think about once you've learned what it's going to do. Now I'm cheating because I'm working backwards from how I've arranged this tune. But the idea is just figure out what the thumb is going to do. You would do that for any kind of song, so do it for this kind of song. And then once you've done that, learn the melody. And this is where hopefully you've picked a key already where not only are the chords going to sit nicely, but where the melody is going to sit on the top 3 strings. This is a rule that I learned from John Knowles ages ago. And he was like, yeah, it's got to fit on the top 3 strings because the bottom 3 strings, that's your thumb's territory, right? So there's only a handful of open keys on the guitar anyway. So it turns out, you know, C is a great place to put the melody. But if you're going to play the tune, before you worry about putting it all together, make sure you have the parts worked out. So find the open key, that's the first step. Figure out what the thumb's going to be doing in the bass, that's the second step. And then make sure you know the melody, right? Instead of trying to like, you know, stick it all together before you quite have the melody, make sure you really know where it sits. And don't worry about it being too syncopated or where you're going to slide or hammer on. Just make sure that you and the melody are well acquainted. So those first 3 steps, now you're ready to start doing the assembly, basically. So the assembly, the first thing is just to play the simplest version of the melody over the simplest version of the bass. Then you can start to think about embellishing the melody with more syncopation, maybe, you know, some kinds of articulations, whether you're going to hammer on or pull off or slide. And then, finally after that, you can think about if you're going to be doing any improvising on the tune. But the main thing is to learn the tune itself. And so to learn a basic version of the song, start with your thumb doing what you assigned it, and start by playing the melody, relatively straightforward, and see where the thumb and the melody line up, where you're going to pinch. That is, where is the finger going to play with the thumb? And if you're not syncopating the melody, most of the song will be pinches. And there the melody's resting. So ultimately you're probably going to want to do some kind of fill, but don't worry about it for now. Just make sure that you can proceed with the melody. So you're just putting a simple melody over the bass and looking for how to coordinate it, which again, is no different from learning a rag or a folk song or a blues tune. It's the same steps. And then once you have the basic melody worked out over the basic alternating thumb, then you can start to look at, well, how do I want to make this really swing? How do I want to syncopate the melody? How do I want to phrase the melody so it sounds better? There's a lot of little things going on there to make it sound more musical. Something as simple as going from, playing on beats 1, 2, 3, 4, to playing 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. If you know how to play the melody on the beat, then you know what it would take to move it off the beat, bringing it ahead by half a beat, by an eighth note, basically. So instead of playing on the beats, you're going to start playing on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? So there is a mechanical solution for acquiring that kind of musicality, which is just to take the straight melody and start moving it and syncopating it. And then there's other things, like if there's going to be sort of a gap in the melody, right? The melody's sitting there on the G chord going, then you can start to fill in some of the inner voices. Which starts to just, fill in some of the space between the bass and the melody so it doesn't sound like you're just playing a melody over a bass and there's nothing sort of musical to kind of hold it together in the middle. But it all starts from that basic layout of what is the bass doing, what is the melody doing. Now, getting into improvising on the tune is really a whole other set of things to do. But you can start with the same alternating thumb as your foundation and then start to look at the kinds of things that will work on top, which are mostly what are the notes in the key of C, what are the notes of the home scale, the 1 chord, and then how do you need to adapt those notes to start filling in and addressing some of the non-diatonic chords, like A7 is not in the key of C, so what are you going to do to deal with that? D7 is not in the key of C. How are you going to handle that? is in the key of C. So, you've got these moments you've got to deal with. And so the foundation is still going to be this bass. And instead of worrying about, well, how am I going to go up the neck and do all these things? Just find out what you can do in open position first. There's a lot of music right down there in open position. So that's really a whole other subject. But the idea is it's built off the same foundation as what you need to create just to play the melody. So there is a continuum between getting the bass going just to put a basic melody over the bass, and then to put a more embellished melody over the bass, and then to start improvising over the bass. Same foundation for all three steps. And of course, I'll be going over all of this in much more detail in the workshop on July 19th. So to learn more about that and sign up, go to the link below or the link on screen. In the meantime, if you got a question or comment about today's lesson, leave it for me down below. I would love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.